Welcome back to the show. Now to the man who survived a shocking lion attack in Africa but went on to work in the wilderness there. It only took a moment, but Richard Field suffered massive injuries. It was a deep cut to the back of his head. It's so distressing to look at. We've actually had to blur it from morning TV, but he spent a lot of time recovering after the attack, with his partner helping him to come to terms with what had actually happened and how it made him feel about his passion, the wildlife of Africa. And we're lucky enough to have Richard join us on the couch to share his story now. First of all, how did the attack happen and how much of it do you remember?
Well, I remember it all. I was conscious throughout the whole thing. It happened about 17 years ago. I was working as a photographic safari guide in northern Botswana. And I was in an open Land Rover. We were driving through the bush. I had a couple of guests on my Land Rover, and we were following the tracks of a female lion, and she had very small cubs. And the tracks left the road, and I hopped out of the vehicle to go and see which... Yes, it was a mistake. Yeah.
How are you?
Well, look, it's as a guide, that's kind of one of the things that you do, is you find out which direction the tracks go, and then you drive around and see if you can find the animal.
What happened? You got out of the truck?
Yes, I walked back, I found the tracks, and I heard this little rustle in the bush.
Oh.
And looked up, and this lioness was coming at me from around the side of a termite mound. And, you know, I saw her running, and I just thought, gee, she's got to stop, she's got to stop. But I knew that I couldn't run. I had to stand my ground. I just stood up, raised my arm above my head.
You stood up? You didn't curl?
No, you've got to try and look as intimidating as possible. Yeah. And I just screamed, and I thought, gee, she's got to stop. If she doesn't stop, I'm dead.
And how did she stop?
She didn't stop.
So then what
she landed in his head.
She barreled into me, and I found myself on the ground with this lion on top of me. And I'm just thinking, well, I'm going to die.
Can you explain what it's like to have your head inside the mouth of a lion?
Well, you know what, I threw a few punches before that happened, and it was the most useless thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Could you feel her teeth on your bones?
Yeah, well, you know what, after I threw the punches, I thought were going to save my life, but it was completely futile. I put my hands behind the back of my neck, which probably saved my life, because she didn't go for my neck. She went into the back of my head, but I felt her teeth bite into the back of my head.
So why did she stop biting?
Well, you know,
did someone come and help?
Yeah, so I had the two people in the vehicle, and I was very fortunate. They were experienced safari goers. The lady, very intuitive. She watched me walk back. She saw the lion come out. She yelled at her husband to drive. He jumped into the driver's seat. I was behind the car. They had to drive around in a big circle, pretty much straight at the lion, and they managed to chase her off.
Wow. So if they hadn't have been that quick thinking, it could have been a different...
Yeah, it could have been a different scenario. You know, if she'd had a bit more time, then...
But then they had to... You had to be flown 1,000 k's.
Yeah, well, I guess before that, my poor old fiancée had to do all my first aid, like all the preliminary first aid. My head was just in ribbons. You know, from here back, you know, I'd had a number 2 haircut the day before.
But your hair looks good now, though.
Yeah.
It's all grown over it.
It's kind of grown over. There's a lot of scarring underneath. Yeah.
So you've had your head in a lion's mouth. It's basically tried to bite off your head.
Yeah.
The tourist who you were taking on safari have thought, oh, is this part of the show? And then realise it's not. Driven into the lion, chased away in the car. Then they grab you.
They didn't grab me.
What did they do?
Yelled at me.
They yelled at you.
They yelled at me to get into the car, and I was, you know, lying there just in this pool of blood in complete shock. And I was thinking, well, maybe I've taken spinal trauma, maybe I should be treated here. And then I saw the lion. She was sitting in the grass about 30 metres away looking at me, and I thought, oh, bug on my neck, I'm getting in the car, you know. Climbed in, and, yeah, that's where we drove back to camp, where my poor old fiancée had my head in her lap. And I'm looking up at her going, can we get married?
Oh, did you really say that?
I did, yeah.
Oh,
It took you a long time. The road to recovery took you a long time. And I read that at first you were really angry.
I was.
Angry at the lion.
I was angry at the lion, yeah, because, you know, I never intended to walk into her. I never intended to put her under threat. You know, lions are supposed to, you know, in inverted commas, if you read the textbooks, they're supposed to give you a warning growl. They're supposed to give you a mock charge. They're not supposed to actually attack you.
She had babies.
And well, yeah, that was my big mistake. You know, that was really, it was a whopper of a mistake.
You can't be angry at the lion now. You have to realise that it was your fault.
But you always, because you love animals so much and you love the lion so much, you always felt betrayed, is that right? So how could you do this to
Yeah, well, and I was also the only guide that I'd ever met who that had happened to. You know, other guides and...
I mean, what I find extraordinary, just listening to all of this, is that you went back. I mean, having survived being almost killed by a lion, you're actually there living and working.
Yeah, going back was tough,
What is it about Africa?
Yeah, but Africa's magnetic. It gets into your heart and it gets into your soul, you know, more than any place else I've ever been to. And you can't, you know, it was in my blood and I knew that I loved it.
So what are you doing there?
Well, I run a safari company now, a travel company called African Family Safaris, and we
What
tailor.
could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Well, I figure that, you know, I've made the biggest mistake, and
So you won't make it again.
Do you still like lions?
I love lions. I love lions. You know,
How are we
more
going
than ever.
in saving them? Are we?
Well, they're under threat. Their numbers have dropped significantly, and you know, it's a lot of it's due to hunting and encroachment from people, and you know, the wilderness is getting
It's smaller.
And
But you're
that's
doing
one of
your
the-
bit.
Well, the company that I run, we use great safari operators in Africa who really take care to work with communities so that they can see that there's more money in tourism than in poaching.
Yep.
And,
It is something for the bucket list, that's for
Wonderful.
sure, an African safari. Richard Field, thank you so much for sharing your own.